Prince Harry's war with the House of Windsor has reached a point no one inside the palace ever believed possible. What began as a bitter family rift then escalated into public accusations, lawsuits, interviews, documentaries, and memoirs has now allegedly crossed into a territory so sensitive that senior royal advisors privately describe it as the most destabilizing moment since abdication. This time, the conflict is no longer about titles, security, money, or media narratives. It is about children, and according to multiple royal observers and legal analysts watching developments unfold in California and London simultaneously, Prince Harry has allegedly made it clear that the future relationship between King Charles III and his grandchildren may depend entirely on whether the monarchy reopens doors it deliberately closed years ago. Behind the scenes, as whispers of a looming divorce between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle grow louder, sources claim that Harry is facing a convergence of pressures unlike anything he has previously encountered. Financial strain, legal vulnerability, diminishing public sympathy, and the reality of American family law have reportedly forced him into a corner. And when cornered, insiders suggest, Harry has chosen escalation over a retreat. According to claims circulating among royal correspondents, Harry has allegedly signaled that access to Archie and Lilibet is no longer guaranteed if the monarchy continues its policy of silence and disengagement. The message, as interpreted within palace circles, was not emotional but transactional. Restore support, recognition, and protection, or accept permanent distance from the children. If accurate, this represents a seismic shift in the nature of Harry's conflict with the crown. The monarchy has weathered public criticism before. It has survived scandals that shook public trust and family disputes that played out in full view of the world. But coercion involving children is something else entirely. Within royal culture, it is viewed not merely as unacceptable, but as a direct threat to the moral authority upon which the institution rests. And that is why, according to insiders, the palace response has been chillingly simple: silence. To understand how Prince Harry reached this point, it is necessary to examine the slow collapse of the narrative that once protected him. For years, Harry was the most popular royal in Britain. He was the damaged prince, the spare who suffered publicly, the soldier who served, the son who walked behind his mother's coffin. His mistakes were absorbed by palace machinery designed to protect the family at all costs. That protection vanished the moment he and Meghan Markle chose to step away. The exit was framed as liberation, a bold break from an outdated system. What followed, however, was not freedom, but exposure. In California, the realities of private life proved far harsher than royal life had ever been. Security costs skyrocketed. Media deals came with expectations and deadlines. Public goodwill eroded as accusations multiplied and inconsistencies emerged. Netflix projects delivered attention, but not lasting credibility. Publishing ventures generated headlines, but also backlash. Lawsuits drained time, money, and focus. And through it all, the monarchy did not intervene. There were no quiet rescues, no discreet bailouts, no behind-the-scenes fixes. For the first time in his life, Harry was fully responsible for the consequences of his choices. According to observers, this shift hit hardest as cracks reportedly formed within Harry and Meghan's marriage. While no formal divorce filings have been made public, legal commentators suggest that pre-divorce positioning is already underway. California's family law system is unforgiving, especially when wealth, public exposure, and international elements are involved. Custody jurisdiction, financial responsibility, and the children's long-term stability are all issues that must be resolved long before a case ever reaches a courtroom. And unlike royal tradition, American courts are not swayed by lineage, sentiment, or legacy. They are governed by documentation, behavior, and precedent. This is where Archie and Lilibet move from the background to the center of the story. For years, their absence from royal life was framed as protection. Privacy was the justification, distance the method. But sources now claim that Harry has come to view that distance as leverage. The monarchy, particularly King Charles, is deeply conscious of optics involving grandchildren. Charles's reign has been defined by an attempt to soften the crown's image, to present himself as a unifying figure after decades of turbulence. A narrative in which a grandfather is denied access to his grandchildren carries emotional weight. Harry, according to royal watchers, understands this well. Yet insiders insist he has misunderstood the institution he is confronting. The monarchy does not operate on emotion alone, it operates on precedent. And within palace walls, advisors are said to have immediately recognized the danger of engagement under pressure. If the crown were to respond to an ultimatum involving children, it would establish a precedent that could haunt future generations. Today, it would be Harry. Tomorrow, it could be anyone with proximity to the line of succession. The institution, by its nature, cannot afford that vulnerability. Prince William's role in this moment is critical. Those close to him describe a man who has grown increasingly rigid in his understanding of duty. To William, this is no longer a personal dispute between brothers. It is an institutional threat. He is said to believe that yielding even slightly would compromise the stability he is sworn to protect. Princess Anne reportedly shares this view, perhaps even more forcefully. Known for her uncompromising loyalty to the crown, Anne has long warned against emotional decision-making that weakens structural authority. Sources claim she views the alleged use of children as leverage, as a line that cannot be crossed without consequence. As a result, Kensington Palace has adopted a strategy that appears cold but calculated. There are no statements, no leaks, no visible reaction. The silence is deliberate. By refusing to engage, the monarchy avoids validating the alleged threat. It avoids creating legal exposure in American courts. And most importantly, it avoids placing Archie and Lilibet at the center of a public negotiation. Royal strategists believe that time is on their side. Legal realities will assert themselves, emotional leverage will fade, and any attempt to weaponize children will collapse under scrutiny. Legal experts echo this assessment. In California family courts, the welfare of the children is paramount. Judges are deeply suspicious of any behavior that suggests manipulation or coercion. Even the perception that a parent is using access to children as bargaining power can severely damage their position. Documentation matters. Communications matter. Patterns of behavior matter. If any record exists that supports claims of leverage or threats, the consequences could be devastating for Harry's custody standing. The irony, analysts note, is that a strategy intended to protect his influence could permanently undermine it. Public perception has also shifted in subtle but significant ways. Harry was once seen as the wounded party, the victim of an unfeeling institution. Increasingly, he is being portrayed as an aggressor, a man willing to challenge the monarchy itself to regain control. That shift is dangerous. Sympathy is finite. And when children enter the equation, public tolerance evaporates quickly. The monarchy understands this. It is betting that restraint, not reaction, will ultimately define the narrative. As this standoff continues, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This conflict has moved beyond reconciliation. It has entered a phase where every action carries irreversible consequences. If the allegations are even partially true, Prince Harry may have crossed a threshold from which there is no return. The crown can survive estrangement, it can survive scandal, but it will not negotiate under threat, and it will not allow children to become instruments of power. This is not just the darkest chapter of Harry's relationship with his family. It may be the moment that permanently severs him from the institution that once defined his entire life. What began as a private marital collapse has now evolved into a legal and emotional labyrinth with no clean exits, and at the center of it all stands Meghan Markle, watching, calculating, and, according to multiple sources, quietly preparing for outcomes far more permanent than reconciliation. While Prince Harry's alleged ultimatum to King Charles has dominated internal palace panic, insiders insist Meghan's role in the unfolding crisis is far more complex than public narratives suggest. Far from being a passive observer, she is described by those familiar with the negotiations as acutely aware of the power dynamics at play and fully conscious of how the royal family's internal fracture could reshape custody, control, and long-term influence over Archie and Lilibet. Sources close to the California proceedings say Meghan has adopted a notably restrained posture, allowing Harry's anger and desperation to take center stage, while she remains outwardly focused on stability and routine for the children. This contrast, insiders note, is not accidental. In high-conflict divorce cases, especially those involving public figures, The party who appears calm, child-centered, and non-confrontational often gains significant advantage in court. Legal analysts quietly observing the situation believe Meghan's team is acutely aware that if Harry is perceived as emotionally volatile or strategically reckless, it could fundamentally alter custody outcomes in her favor. Behind closed doors, Meghan's legal advisors are reportedly mapping scenarios that assume prolonged estrangement between Harry and the royal family. According to sources, they view Harry's deteriorating relationship with the monarchy not as a liability, but as a factor that strengthens the argument that the children's primary stability lies in California, away from institutional pressure and transatlantic conflict. While Meghan has not publicly commented on the alleged ultimatum, insiders claim she has not intervened to stop it either, a silence that some interpret as tacit acceptance of the path Harry has chosen. Legal experts emphasize that in California family courts, intent matters as much as action. If Harry is seen as attempting to extract concessions from third parties by leveraging access to his children, judges may question his judgment and emotional boundaries. Even the perception of such behavior can have consequences, particularly in cases involving international considerations and high-profile scrutiny. Several family law specialists have noted privately that Harry's status as a prince offers no legal shield in this jurisdiction. If anything, it increases scrutiny. Meanwhile, the palace's internal response has hardened. What initially began as shock has reportedly shifted into strategic disengagement. Senior aides now speak less about reconciliation and more about legacy management. The prevailing view inside Kensington Palace is that the institution must prepare for a future in which Harry is permanently detached, not just operationally, but emotionally. According to insiders, contingency plans now assume that Archie and Lilibet may grow up with little to no meaningful connection to the royal family, a reality that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. This acceptance marks a profound psychological shift within the monarchy. For decades, the royal family absorbed scandals and betrayals under the belief that blood ties ultimately prevailed. That belief is now eroding. Advisors argue that the monarchy cannot afford to be held hostage by familial relationships, particularly when those relationships are weaponized. The priority, they insist, is safeguarding the crown's long-term credibility, even if it means sacrificing personal bonds. Prince William's role in this recalibration cannot be overstated. Sources close to him describe a man who has quietly but decisively concluded that his brother is no longer a reliable participant in the institution's future. William's focus, insiders say, is on ensuring that when he ascends the throne, the monarchy is insulated from emotional volatility and precedent-setting concessions. He reportedly believes that yielding now would invite future crises, not just from Harry, but from any royal willing to exploit personal relationships for leverage. King Charles, though emotionally affected, is said to be increasingly aligned with this view. Those close to the monarch say he has begun to accept that his relationship with his grandchildren may be shaped by distance rather than presence. While deeply painful, advisors argue that maintaining institutional authority is his ultimate responsibility. Any decision that weakens the crown in the short term for emotional relief could damage it irreparably in the long term. Psychologists consulted by royal aides warn that prolonged conflict of this nature can have lasting consequences for all parties involved, particularly children. Growing up amid unresolved tension, estrangement, and public speculation can complicate identity formation and emotional security. Insiders say this concern is frequently raised in private discussions. But there is growing recognition that the palace has limited ability to intervene without legitimizing the very tactics it seeks to discourage. Public perception is another battleground. While Harry's narrative has long relied on portraying himself as the aggrieved party battling an uncaring institution, insiders believe that narrative may be fraying. Even sympathetic observers have begun questioning the ethics of involving children, directly or indirectly, in disputes with the crown. The palace's silence, once criticized, is now increasingly interpreted as restraint rather than indifference. As weeks pass without resolution, sources say Meghan's team is positioning for a future in which Harry's relationship with the monarchy is functionally irrelevant to the children's upbringing. Educational plans, residency assumptions, and social environments are reportedly being framed around California permanence. This approach, legal experts note, subtly reinforces the argument that the children's best interests are served by minimizing exposure to international conflict and institutional instability. For Harry, the implications are stark. Insiders warn that he may be approaching a moment where leverage turns into isolation. By escalating pressure rather than de-escalating conflict, he risks alienating not only the royal family, but also legal systems that value cooperation and child-focused decision-making. What began as an attempt to regain control could result in diminished influence over both the institution he left and the family he is fighting to protect. Royal historians suggest that this crisis may ultimately redefine the boundaries between monarchy and family in the modern era. The crown has always balanced tradition with adaptation, but rarely has it faced a challenge so deeply personal, yet institutionally dangerous. If the palace holds firm, it signals a new doctrine, that no individual, regardless of birth, can leverage the next generation to extract concessions from the crown. The silence from Buckingham and Kensington Palace continues, and according to insiders, it will remain unbroken, not because the monarchy lacks compassion, but because it believes that responding publicly would validate tactics it considers unacceptable. In this calculus, restraint is strength and distance is defense. As the divorce proceedings move forward, one reality becomes increasingly clear. There may be no winners in this conflict, only degrees of loss. Harry risks losing his remaining ties to the institution that shaped him. King Charles risks a distant relationship with his grandchildren. Archie and Lilibet risk growing up defined by a feud they did not create. And the monarchy risks permanent alteration of its internal family structure. What happens next will not be decided in interviews or headlines, but in courtrooms, private meetings, and quiet decisions that shape lives for decades. The fairy tale is over. What remains is a cautionary tale about power, pain, and the cost of crossing lines that, once crossed, can never be restored. And as this chapter closes, one truth stands above all others. The modern monarchy is no longer fighting for image alone. It is fighting for its moral boundaries. And this battle, unlike so many before it, may leave scars that time itself cannot erase.